Since okay, I'd like to have Stu Madison now welcome our guest speaker, Bobby Valentine, for his return appearance.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Yeah, I want to welcome Bobby back to Senior Men's Club. He was here about a year and a half, 2 years ago when we were doing things live. Just a note, I got Bobby's bio from his administrator, my ex-wife, and it was 3 or 4 pages, and I don't think I'm going to read that. So a brief bio would be that Bobby was a Connecticut native growing up in Stafford. He was one of the three all-time all-state football players in the state history at the Rickwam High School. One of the best athletes from Connecticut of the 20th century, as voted by the Sports Illustrated. He planned on pursuing a college football career at USC, but was selected 5th in the first round of the 1968 amateur baseball draft by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Bobby made his major league debut in September 2nd, 1969, versus the New York Mets, a club he would go on to manage, as we all know. All told, Bobby spent about 10 seasons in the major leagues, playing for the Dodgers, San Diego Padres, California Angels, Mets, and the Seattle Mariners. He appeared in 639 games and hit .260 average. Over the course of his career, Bobby played every position on the field except pitcher during his career, showing versatility that has served him well since his final appearance in the show on September 30th, 1979. So we all welcome Bobby, and Bobby, it's all yours. Thank you for coming.
I think I'm unmuted. Thank you, Stu. Are we on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
How we doing?
You
can hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Your image is frozen though.
Joe, how we doing?
Can you hear us?
Oh, no, let's give it 1 second. You know, the old internet up in North Stamford, you know, it doesn't work all that well, especially in the snow.
We see you now. Good.
Doing good now.
Clear.
Hi, guys. We're all right, Stu. Are you ready to go?
Yes, go ahead, Bobby. You're on.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. Thank you. It's a great return trip, you know, and you said a little about my playing career, which seems like just yesterday, but it was actually a long, long time ago. And, you know, I just got through writing a book, which is kind of interesting. I did it with a semi-local guy. Some of you might have read some of his past works, like the Andre Agassi life story and the Billy Martin, and I remember Jim Bouton's book, The Bronx Zoo. Well, this Peter Goldenbach and I teamed up for about 440 pages of stuff that happened in my life so far. And I was reviewing it, and I realized that I had some great encounters with some of the leaders of our country, and I didn't mention any of it in the book. So you mind if I just go through a couple of those experiences when I was in the White House or on a tarmac with a president or something like that?
Sure.
Thumbs up. Okay, great. Well, you know, in the 80s, I was managing the Texas Rangers. I became the Texas Ranger manager at 35 years old. And then by the time I was 38, the team had sold to a group that was headed up by George W. Bush and 18 other financiers who wanted to be part of a baseball team. Well, George W. later became the governor of Texas and then the president of the United States, as you know. But he and I, hung out together for 3.5 years while he was the president of my baseball team, or managing general partner. Well, the first year that he owned the team was 89, and his father, George H., came out to throw out the first pitch of the season. And I got to spend time with Barbara Bush most of the time because she was heading up a national reading initiative. And my young son and I had a good book of the week club going with all the Frank L. Baum books about the Wizard of Oz and others. And so from there, George went to the White House, and I visited him one time with my New York Met team. I said, George, congratulations. This was in 2000. My team's going to be in Miami. And we have an off day. Do you think we could fly some of the guys up and come and meet you at the White House? And he said, certainly. And so only the all-star players on my team, or the guys from Texas, were allowed to go up with me because they didn't have a whole lot of time that they could spend in the Oval Office. But we arrived there, we had fun, we talked, and it was time to go. And when it was time to go, we got up and everyone was walking out and saying, thank you, Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. And we knew we were on a real tight time schedule. And right at the end, Mike Piazza, who was one of my players, reached in his pocket and took out a ball and said, Mr. President, would you mind signing the ball before we leave? And now we're on a time frame, and I'm thinking about going over, and I'm getting nervous. And he walks over to his desk and he takes out a pen and he signs his autograph and he gets him. And I said, wow, I think we're going to be able to get out of here on time. And then Al Leiter, a pitcher on my team, took out 2 balls. And he said, would you mind signing one for my wife and one for my mom? And so now he starts to sign that, and he's talking, and I know we went over our allotted time because remember, that was the president by the second era before 9/11. Of course, that was going to be the big thing of the George W. White House, that they were going to be on time and do everything efficiently, because their predecessor was a little looser than that. Anyway, he signs the balls. I go to the door of the Oval Office. I open the door, ready to leave with all my guys, and standing in the doorway with his arms folded like this is Dick Cheney with a big frown on his face. And I go, hello, Mr. Vice President, I'm Bobby Valentine. He could care less who I was or who the other guys were in the room with me. All he wanted to do is get George out of the Oval Office and down to the Rose Garden in time to make his speech at the Rose Garden. So I thought that was kind of cool, And prior to that, in '89, when Reagan was the president of the United States, and I'm not all about the Republicans, this happens to be a couple of the tours that I made to the White House. Tommy Lasorda's team, the Dodgers, had just won the World Championship in '88. And in the spring of '89, he was in New York and I was managing my team in Baltimore. We were playing the Orioles. I was managing the Texas Rangers. And Tommy called and said, hey, there's a big Italian delegation from Italy that are going to be at the White House for lunch. Why don't you come up from Baltimore and join me for lunch? And so I drove up, and now, guys and gals, when you look at the television today and you see the Capitol building with the fences around it and see the White House security that's there. Well, I drove up with my car in 1989 and I parked it on the street because I was a little late. I went into this little entrance to the White House area. It was a little guardhouse where you went in one side and the fence was on each side of the building. And then you gave your ID and they put it into a computer and they let you go in on the other side of the gate. It was amazing how there was no security at all back in even in 2000 when I went there with George W. But when I got into the Oval Office this time with President Reagan, the Marine was at the door, waiting for us to come in, and he opened the door and he went in. Tommy Lasorda and I went into the Oval Office and to meet the president before we were going to go have lunch with that Italian delegation. And after shaking hands with the president, kiddingly, I turned around as though I was going to do something rather quickly. And I reached toward his desk where the red phone was on the corner of the desk. And I said, Mr. President, would you mind if I called my wife while I'm here at the Oval Office? And everyone in the room just yelled and jumped and said, don't do it, don't do it. And I really wasn't going to do it. And then the president, after laughing, said, well, why don't you call your wife? I'll have the operator get her on the phone. So he, as Larry Speaks, his press secretary, go out and tell the White House operator to call my number at my house. And so I could tell my wife where I was, because it was kind of a spur of the moment that I went up there from Baltimore. And when the White House called, my wife said, oh, sure, he's at the White House. Where is he really? One of those things. She didn't believe the phone call was coming. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then in '97, when Major League Baseball decided to retire Jackie Robinson's number 42 for all of teams, the commissioner and the president of the United States, Bill Clinton, came to Shea Stadium, where I was managing the New York Mets, and they were going to have a pregame ceremony to retire Jackie Robinson's number. Now, incredibly, President Clinton came into my office, and I asked if I could bring my coaches in to meet him prior to the ceremony. He said, of course. And I brought all my coaches in and I introduced them one by one. They all shook his hand and took a photo with him. While he was taking the photo, he said something pertinent about each of the coaches' lives. He said, to Tom Robson, I hear you are a great home run hitter in the minor leagues. Tom was my hitting coach. And he said to Bob Apodaca, who was my pitching coach, oh, I remember when you pitched for the Mets back in the 70s. I was saying, well, this is amazing. This guy knows my team. Now he leaves my office and I have all of my players at their locker, in the locker room, thinking the president would go in and address my team quickly before he would go out on the field. Well, no. What he did is he went around locker to locker. He shook hands and took a photograph with each of my players and said something about them that was pertinent to their lives. I remember he said to Armando Benitez, my closer, who was from the Dominican Republic, he says, Armando, does your mother still cook you rice and beans before every game? And that was one of the things about Armando, huh? And so I shook my head, and after the ceremony, I grabbed one of the Secret Service guys who was picking up for as the ceremony was over, and I said, how did he do that? How did he go around and know something about everyone on this obscure New York Met team, 1997? We weren't a World Series team or anything. And the Secret Service guy said, he began studying your team when he got off the plane. He got off the plane at LaGuardia Airport. The ride was all of about 6 minutes. Huh? So I over the years, you start to try to figure out how could a guy really do that. And I know he's really clever and really smart, but I'm starting to think he might have had an earpiece in. And there might have been someone in a remote thing saying, hey, next is John Franco. He's from Staten Island. His dad was a sanitation worker. And that's how maybe he knew what he was doing, but it really was incredible. But I want to share some of that stuff with the people of Stamford, because when, as I told you last time, when I think, and I've thought about it a little more lately because I've written this book, just finished the 440 pages, just how lucky I am, to have grown up in Stamford. I had 5-room house over on the water side. My dad was a carpenter. My mom worked all the time. And from this little place of Stamford, Connecticut, not only did I travel the United States and meet some of the great people who have run our country and who have worked in our country, but I've also been lucky enough to do it overseas, where I've met prime ministers, and I received the Emperor's Award in Japan. I got the Order of the Rising Sun Award from the Emperor of Japan. And what the Emperor does is, the Emperor of Japan is kind of like the Queen of England. They don't really do much, but they give out awards every year. Like the Queen makes people knights every once in a while, and then has a parade. The Emperor is ceremoniously the head of the country, as the Queen is, and every year they give an award to one person in the world that they feel is a politician that should be recognized, and they give one person in the world, the military world, an award that they should be recognized, and one in the public sector, an award that should be recognized. And so, along with Margaret Thatcher and myself, and 3 other dignitaries from around the world, I got the humanitarian award from an emperor. It's really kind of crazy. Oh, and then because you're here, we're here in my living room. This is also the key to New York City. I wonder if you could see that. That's I got that back in 2001 for the relief effort, the help in the relief effort after 9/11. And that's the New York City, key to the city. And then this is kind of cool. This is the mallet, and I got to close the New York Stock Exchange one day, and they also gave me the mallet. So I think those things are kind of cool to share with the people of Stamford. And Stu, what I was hoping we could do is have some questions rather than me just talking at the group. Everyone kind of knows my bio and knows that I played, and I was the director of public safety, and so let's ask questions about anything that I might be able to answer. Why don't we open it up?
Okay, we can do that. A couple questions are coming up. Larry Holtzman.
Go, Larry.
You're mute, Larry.
Yeah. Oh, great presentation, really interesting, and all those mementos. But what is your most memorable experience as a player during your playing career?
Wow. Well, it should be my first hit in the major leagues, but I don't remember it. So I guess it's not very memorable. As a player, that's a great question. I was leading the league in hitting in 1973 when a teammate of mine named Nolan Ryan was on the mound. He had been a California Angel for a couple of years after getting traded to the Angels from the New York Mets after he was with the pitching staff of the Mets in that 69 World Series team. And during this day, I was playing center field and Nolan was pitching and he pitched his first no-hitter. I remember making a couple of the catches in that game. They were pretty good catches and it kind of saved the no-hitter for him. And that's memorable and also something that is in the book, obviously. But if you fast forward from 1973 to 1990, in 1990, Nolan Ryan is now a pitcher on my team for the Texas Rangers. And when I played center field for his first no-hitter, well, I managed his last no-hitter, his 7th, and I managed his 6th, which means I didn't do anything but sat there and watched, because what the heck do you do when a pitcher's pitching a no-hitter? You actually aren't even supposed to move for the last 4 innings. The old superstition. Keep your same seat. Don't anybody move. Don't mention that it's a no-hitter, But I got to manage that 6th and 7th no-hitter and also managed his 300th win in his 5,000 strikeout game. So that's a long answer to my most memorable, but I wish I had a lot of great memories of the 70s, but I really don't. Vividly, that is. Vivid memories. Yeah.
Thanks. I'll ask one. Just curious, of all the different positions you've had, which do you find the most satisfying?
Well, the coolest thing I ever did was play baseball. That's when you're just taking care of yourself and you're just trying to be as good as you could be, I enjoyed that, of course. My first time in a major league uniform, I was a student at University of Southern California, and they expanded the roster of the Los Angeles Dodgers, of the team that I was in the minor leagues with, the organization I was in the minor leagues with. And when they expanded the roster in '69, they allowed me and my roommate, Bill Buckner, who some of you might remember. He was also a student at USC. Well, we got to be in uniform at night at Dodger Stadium while we were students at USC during the day. That was pretty cool back in those days, okay? And, I enjoyed the heck out of that. And that question, Stu, was what?
Which position was the most satisfying?
Oh, yeah. So playing was the most fun. Managing it was really, really fun most of the time, because you have a whole group of people who are at your beck and call, basically, that you are leading them into battle every day, and you're trying to create that bond amongst the group where they can be together as one, because it's kind of like religion. Each season you need to have faith. You need to believe. You need to believe that where you are is a good place, and where you're going is a better place, and that the gospel that the leader is handing out to everyone is the gospel that's going to get you to where you want to go. You know what I mean? And every year, I managed for 20 something years, I managed about 3,500 games. So there were maybe 3,500 gospels, if you will, that, they had to receive. And when they did, it was a good thing. And when there was a mixed message, it was very challenging, let me tell you,
Yeah, I'm sure.
but it was rewarding.
Roman.
Hi, Bobby. Would you give us your objective opinion about Japanese baseball, and are we going to see more Japanese players in Major League?
Okay, hi Roman, thank you for that question. So the Japanese Professional League is a very high quality league. The infrastructure is very similar to our infrastructure, and that is there's beautiful stadiums, there's advertisement, there's games on television, there are 50,000 fans at games, and the talent on the field is very similar. Now, the idea of getting more players is something that I've been opposed to since I went there the first time in 1995, mainly because I think what baseball needs is not to hog all of the resources. They need to expand and spread the resources. And I think that the towns, countries of Asia should have a major league division over there so that it becomes a true World Series that we play at the end of the year rather than just a North American series, if you will. And in order to do that, the players have to stay where they are. That being said, because we pay more money and it is a new experience, where they could eat different food, understand the different league, try to understand the culture that American has and the multi-cultures that we have, is probably the most confusing thing for most people who come here from another country, especially a country like Japan, where it's so monolithic, where it's everyone is Japanese and everyone does the same orderly routine because it's kind of one culture that blends together. And our culture is so multicultural that it becomes very confusing, about the food. What is this American food? Well, it's Mexican tonight. It's Chinese tomorrow night. It's steak on Wednesday. It's we really enjoy all the different cuisines from around the world. But basically, in Japan, even though they have great restaurants from different cultures from around the world, for the most part, Japanese people eat Japanese cuisine only because it's what they like, So I think there could be more players coming. They're good enough to do it. I hope they don't. And I hope that eventually Major League Baseball could expand to an international setting rather than just a national setting.
Thank you. Joe Raccanello.
Yeah, hi, Bobby. Good to see you again. My wife and I were born and raised in Stanford. We followed your career. I watched you score a lot of touchdowns and get a lot of hits in baseball, and my wife went to Rippewam. My question today relates to the Mets. I know you're very familiar with that organization, and they have a lot of good players. Jacob deGrom is a fantastic pitcher, and they have a lot of potential there. And now, as you know, they have an owner with a lot of, he's got deep pockets, and he can attract a lot of good ball players into New York, and New York is a fantastic market. So it seems like they have a good combination. They have a good owner with backing who can attract good players and pay them the appropriate big salaries that big players get today. Here's the question. What do you think of the Mets as an organization now? With that said, going into the future, do you think they're going to be good for a long time to come? I mean, I think they have the right background now and the right players and the right owner to really go places.
Well, I'll tell you this, Joe, that I think for the most part, attitude filters down. It goes from the top down through every organization. And sometimes there's talent within the organization that could overcome some attitudes that might not be winning attitudes, if you know what I mean. But now I think that the attitude right from the top is one that will filter down. And Steve Cohen's attitude is that he wants to be a winner. He's been a winner most of his life. And he wants that attitude to filter down. And I think that's one of the missing links that the Mets have always had, that there was confusion as to what attitude was being filtered down throughout the ranks. So I don't think that that's a turn of the page type of fix. I don't think that that can be something that happens in one fell swoop, and maybe not even in one season. But I think it will happen, and the Mets will be a very good organization for a really long time.
Michael Graneri.
Yeah, hey, Bobby, how are you?
Good, Michael.
Good. Quick question. What leadership lesson or lessons would you take away from your career that maybe could be applied to non-sports, to business, or even things that we should be teaching our children that you have learned in your career?
Well, Mike, I'd like to think that that's another whole book that I could write, that there are so many lessons that you learn, and a lot of the lessons you just can't teach because you have to do it. You can't teach experience, but you can prepare others for experiences that they're going to have. And I think that's what a good leader does, that they inform so that they understand what the rhetoric is to inform those who are following. I think sometimes they have to instruct those who are watching and those who are following, because they might not know exactly the technique that is needed to advance forward. But then that leader has to also inspire. They have to recognize when the player, the employee, the administrator, the athlete is doing what they expect them to do. And during the inspection of the expectation, you need to be able to inspire by not only recognizing the things that are being done exactly right, and we like to do that. Hey, way to go, Bill. That was a perfect play. But also inspire when there is something less than perfection that is being exhibited, so that they can be motivated to reach that highest expectation. I mean, those are some little things that, people, when you get into a leadership position, if you don't understand that you need to inform, and you need to instruct at times, and you need to inspire. And when you do that, what you have is you start to establish trust in yourself. And when you have trust, you can then have teamwork, And I think, when you look out in the crazy political world that we just went through in 2020 and pick out any one of those things out of the sky, hell, the thing that was lacking was trust and leadership. And that's why we couldn't have any teamwork and doing stuff we should have been able to do to maybe even get through this situation with the COVID a little sooner. But understand, it's not a magic wand. You don't say, trust me, follow me, believe in me. You must earn the trust. And the way you earn it is with your ability to give the right information, to give the proper instruction, and to make sure you're inspiring and motivating those to do the right thing.
Great, thanks.
Great answer.
Right. A little long, I think, but why not? What the heck else are we doing?
I see
No one
another book is,
outside.
another book is coming.
I don't think so.
Okay. Ed Roloff.
Thanks.
Unmute yourself, Ed.
Sorry. Hi, Bobby. Thank
Hi,
you.
Ed.
My question has to do with conditioning and injuries. It used to be that players got into shape at spring training for the season. Now it seems players stay in shape all year long and the injuries seem to be escalating. What do you think is a better way to do it?
Interesting you say that. Now remember, during my era and even your era, Ed, the off season was for work. It wasn't for play. It wasn't to keep yourself in shape. It was to make sure that the electric bill was being paid, because you had to work in the off season. Most players throughout the 70s. Because my first paycheck ever was for $500 a month. And that was for 2.5 months of rookie ball. And then the next year I got a raise up to $600 a month. And that was for 5 months in AAA. And when I got to the big leagues, I was making $12,000. So that wasn't enough to go through the entire year. So when the season ended, you got a job. Hell, I got my real estate license. I got my insurance license. I later, of course, opened up a restaurant so that I could have work when I wasn't playing. Today, they do work all year long, play all year long, if you will, stay in shape, throw the ball, and it seems that injuries are trending up. That's kind of true, but it's not totally factual. It seems like more guys get injured, but the difference is until about 1990, let's see, if you want to have a cutoff point, players played when they were hurt. They played because there was a guy behind them that wanted to take their position. Okay? So they didn't come out of the game. There was that we remember the guy named Wally Pipp, who got sick one day, and it was the New York Yankee first baseman, and a guy named Lou Gehrig came in and played in his stead. 2,000 games later, Lou Gehrig came out of the lineup, right? Well, that was like the credo. Everyone knew that story in baseball, so no one ever came out of the lineup. But then the salaries became so large for most players that they were allowed to come out of the lineup, because as soon as they wanted to get back in, the door would open, because you couldn't sit a guy on the bench who was making $5 million. Okay. So
Okay.
that they'll say, hey, I'm hurt. when I was playing, God forbid, if I said I was hurt, I'd never have a job again. I was never hurt. I was always hurt and I was never hurt. I used to get cortisone shots every 2 weeks in my ankle. The needle was that long. It was just so that I could play and handle the pain that I had in this ankle that didn't function the way it was supposed to after I broke my leg. And I would get Novocaine shots at the end of the 2 weeks because the cortisone would wear off. So then I'd get little Novocaine shots right before the game. It would last about 2 hours, numb up the whole area, so I'd get through the game. Today, there's none of that. Today would have a team in court. If they ever heard one of their players was getting a shot to make them feel okay to play in the game, to relieve, that is to disguise injury.
So money was the cause of the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, always follow the money now, right? You want the answer, follow the money. Yeah.
Ira Bernstein.
Unmute, Ira.
Sorry. Okay. What I just said was enjoyed seeing you play in Texas many years ago when we were visiting friends in Dallas.
Glad we're not there today.
Because of the snow.
Yeah.
No
Anyway.
electricity.
Yeah. Anyway, an extension of Stu's earlier question. On the field, what position did you enjoy playing the most?
Oh, okay. Well, that's an easy one. I enjoyed shortstop. And shortstop was one of those things in my life that I'm not sure if I'll ever figure it out because, in Little League, I was a shortstop, but in all-star play, I played center field. Okay, because there was another shortstop who could play short, but there wasn't someone who could play center field the way I played center field. And then I played shortstop for 3 years in high school. And then my senior year, my coach changed and the new coach came in and said he wanted me to play center field. And so I played center field. And then when I was with the Dodgers, I only wanted to play shortstop. They wanted to make me a second baseman. And I insisted on playing shortstop. So I got traded and I went to the California Angels. I insisted on playing shortstop. And I won the shortstop's job. And so I played shortstop for 2 months. And then the manager came to me and said, our center fielder's hurt. Can you play center field today? And I said, of course, I can play center field with my eyes closed. So I went out to center field. And that's the day that Nolan Ryan threw his first no-hitter. Is the day that I went from shortstop to center field. So the next day, the manager says, oh, I'm a superstitious guy now. I said, hey, would you play center field for a day? We got to keep the same lineup. We just broke our losing streak. And I said, I'm cool with that. I'll stay in center field. And that's the day I ran into the wall and I broke my leg. So this shortstop thing, I loved it. And it followed me during my playing career in a real weird way, a love-hate situation. I want to be the greatest shortstop, but it was easy to be the best center fielder. I threw better than anybody else and I ran faster than anybody else. So playing center field was the easiest thing in the world for me to do as a kid. And even in the major leagues, I was very good. I don't know. I was as good as the best in center field. At shortstop, I was still a work in progress, because it wasn't only moving and catching and throwing. It was that other little thing of catching the ground ball, and I wasn't good at that. And sometimes because I wasn't great at that, it gave me anxiety with my throwing, where I thought maybe I took a little too much time to catch it So I better make up the time with the throwing of it. And very often those balls wound up in the second deck. You know what I mean? Shortstop was my favorite.
Thank
Center
you.
field was the easiest, and catching was the most difficult. And the reason I was a catcher in the major leagues is because I was the 25th man on the team in Seattle in 1979. I made the team on a fluke. There was no reason I should have made this team. I got released from the Mets. I was going to try out with the Cleveland Indians in Tucson. There were 3 days left in spring training when Joe Torre released me from the Mets in 1979. And my buddy Jeff Torborg, who I played with the Angels and the Dodgers, was the manager of Cleveland. So I called Jeff, give me a tryout, Jeff. Will you give me a tryout, please, Jeff? You'll love what you see. And he says, well, we only have 1 day left of spring training, Bobby. Can you get down here? And I said, yeah, I'm in St. Petersburg. I'll get there. So I took the flight out of St. Petersburg through Phoenix to get to Tucson, to get there in the afternoon after their last game to have a tryout. Well, there was a 3-hour layover in Phoenix, and I got in a cab and went to see my first roommate, my best friend, Tom Torres, who was playing for the Mariners in Tempe, Arizona, a mere 20 minutes away from the airport. And when I went in to the clubhouse, I heard this guy screaming bloody murder. And I looked around the corner and a guy was holding his hand up like this, and there was blood spurting all over the place. And I didn't know who he was. And I went over to my buddy Pashurek and I gave him a big hug and I said, they released me. I might not be ever playing again. Oh, who's the guy who caught his hand in the fridge? Well, it turns out the guy who was going to play third base for the Mariners that day, their last day of spring training, 1979, is the guy that caught his hand. And, you know, we all remember the coffin coolers that you put the Cokes in, and they open up like this, and you reach in and you get it, and then you take the Coke out. Once he got it, took it out, it comes down in his hand, and he's a bloody mess. And when I find out who he is and what he does, I said, you need a third baseman today, to Tommy Pachoric. And he says, go in and tell the manager you can play third. I'm in my civilian's clothes. I have one suitcase that I'm traveling with. It has my glove and my spikes and maybe a change of clothes because I wasn't going to check anything because I didn't want to wait for luggage. I didn't know what would happen in those days, and I had a tryout to make. You know what I mean? And so I walked into the manager's office with my little bag, and I said, "Hi, Daryl." The manager's Daryl Johnson. You might remember he also managed the Red Sox back in the day. I said, "Hey, Daryl, how are you? I'm Bobby Valentine." He said, "Yeah." And he was smoking his cigarette, and he could give a damn. It's the last day of spring training, right? Everything's packed up. He's got a game, and then they're going to go play the regular season. And I said, "Hey, you know, if you need someone, I could play third base. I've played third base before, and I'm a free agent." And he said, "What do you mean, free agent? Why would I need a third baseman?" With that being said, the general manager of the team, Lou Gorman, comes to his office in a panic because he was out in the locker room and he saw all the blood spurting from Bill Stein's hand. He comes in to tell the manager what's going on. And I'm standing there. And I said, "Hello, Mr. Gorman, how are you? I just told Daryl that I could play third base if you need someone." He says, "Can you step out of the room?" I stepped out of the room. About 10 minutes later, they told me to get a uniform, and I played for the Seattle Mariners the last day of spring training and got 4 hits. I was on the Star of the Game show after the game. But they didn't know what to do with me. I didn't have a contract, and I flew with the team to Seattle So I was on that team, sitting the bench, making the team in this fashion, when the third string catcher got injured in the game. The first string catcher was already on the disabled list, and the second string catcher had a pulled hamstring. And when the third string catcher got a foul tip off his finger, and he was like this behind home plate, the manager came down, Daryl Johnson, looked at me and said, "You've caught before, haven't you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, you need a catcher?" And he says, "We might." And he walked out, looked at the guy's hand. He had a broken finger, and he waved me out. I had never put on the catcher's equipment before in my life. And now it's the fifth inning of a major league game, and I'm putting down the signals for my catcher and for my pitcher, Glenn Abbott. That's kind of a cool story.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Brianna. Who's Brianna?
Hi there. My name is Brianna Gerchulo. I'm a reporter for the Stanford Advocate. Thanks for letting me join you this morning.
Wow, I didn't know
Welcome.
that I let you join. I read
I
your
didn't know
stuff
either.
once in a while. How are you?
Good, good. So I wanted to ask, I'm a little curious, there's a mayoral election coming up this year.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if you would ever consider running for mayor of Stanford.
Oh,
Wow. Do you have a party nomination that you could give out right now? You know, it's a funny thing. You say it is an election year for some of the situations in our city and our state, and I have given it consideration, and I'm still considering it. Let me put it that way. Yeah, I'm kind of considering it. It's a crazy thought, and anytime I say it to someone, they say, "Why the hell would you do that?" And I'm working on the answer.
like, why the hell would you play catcher?
Exactly. You know, why not? When I was with Tommy Lasorda at the World Series, and so Brianna, you could figure out how long I've been thinking about this. That was this year, and it was in Texas. And as many of you know, Tommy was my first manager, and he was everything to me when I was away from home. And he was everything to me in baseball. And now he's 94 years old. And the last time the Dodgers won the World Series, he was the manager of the team. And now they haven't won a World Series since, and they have a really good shot at doing it. And crazy enough, the World Series was being played in Texas because of COVID. So both teams, went to Texas to play. And I had a very good and very wealthy friend who also loves Tommy. And we collectively got a doctor to fly with him, set up all of the testing protocols, got a suite at the Texas Stadium, and flew Tommy in for the 6th game of the World Series. It was really an amazing choreographed way of bringing a 94-year-old guy with some situations, and he's had his situations, and to get the private plane, to get him off of it, to get him to the hotel where the room and everyone has been tested, and get him at the game. So he's there for that time that the Dodgers win the World Series again. And I happened to be with him the entire time in the suite. And when I mentioned to him, "Hey, Tommy, I'm thinking about running for mayor of Stamford, Connecticut. What do you think?" He looked at me and said, "Why not?" And he knows me and he knows Stanford as well as he knows anyone, and he knows his hometown because he ate many a meal at my mom's house at 735 Stillwater, and he devoured many a pizza at Polici's restaurant, and he entertained many a person at my, Stanford Bobby Valentine's, Milford Bobby Valentine's, Norwalk Bobby Valentine's, whenever Tommy's team was in town during his managerial stint, or when he was in town afterwards. He was always in Stamford, Connecticut, and he was always at God, everyone knows he was always at a restaurant, eating and enjoying life at night. Tommy was that guy who understood that being a public figure came with responsibility. And one of the responsibilities he believed he had as being a manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers was to share his experience with others. Okay. And we didn't have the internet and social media, for Tommy Lasorda. Oh, would he have been a mega star on social media? I'm going to tell you what. But during his day, there wasn't that. So his platform was always the dinner table. And wherever he was, whatever city he was in, he was always at dinner with groups of people, always entertaining them and always sharing his experiences with them. And because I bought so many of those dinners, and because, as you probably know, Tommy Lasorda never bought a dinner. And when I flew out to his funeral with his brother Harry and his 3 kids, Tommy's niece and nephews, I was sitting in the plane and I said to them, kind of rhetorically, so how many meals do you think Tommy got for free in his life? And all 4 of his relatives said in unison, as though they were rehearsing it before they got in the plane, all of them. because it was incredible. He never had money with him. He never had a credit card. And he never starved. He had a great meal every night, everywhere it was. And, I have, he passed away, as all of you probably know. And I was fortunate enough to give his eulogy and be with his family and do everything that we needed to do to, tie up the loose ends, if you will. But one of the things that was talked about often with all those who gathered, and it was a big Zoom gathering and a small private gathering for the funeral. Even though the Dodgers on the last second allowed the orchestrators, if you will, of Tommy's last day, allowed us to bring the coffin to Dodger Stadium, and we brought it around to the dugout right where Tommy would always stand at Dodger Stadium, and we had 6 pallbearers in Tommy's uniform at the dugout, and they all brought the coffin out to the mound at Dodger Stadium. And a couple of the nuns who were with Tommy for the last 30 years of his life, the sisters of, I forget their fate, their sect, but they said a couple prayers, and we had some of his hair and some of his nails that we were able to spread the ashes on Dodger Stadium turf, and it was really cool. But probably the thing that was talked about the most The whole time is about Tommy's free meals and about the restaurants that benefited from putting his photograph up on the wall, with a full stack of food in his mouth, and give it a thumbs up. Thousands of restaurants around the country and around the world have his picture in it because he was, he was out every night. I'm sorry, go ahead, Stu. I get a little.
Great news. That's a great story. Fascinating. I've got three more questions and I have one.
You guys
Bob
have time.
Rosenthal.
Yeah.
Bob Rosenthal.
Right after that moving story, this may seem a tad trivial, but I'm very curious to know whether you think the idea of starting the 10th inning with a runner on second base might survive COVID.
Regretfully, I think it might. I'm not a fan of it, only because I think you're supposed to earn. It's so hard to score a run that you discount that situation by putting a runner out there, and then the statistics are so skewed by it. A guy gets a run scored. Well, he didn't even get on base, and he gets a run scored credited. And a pitcher gives up an earned run if he gives up the run. Well, it's not his earned run. He didn't put that guy out there. It's a commissioner's earned run, and even the RBI that somebody might get is not an earned team RBI. You're hitting in a certain place in the lineup because of the people who are in front of you who have their certain ways of getting around the bases that you're going to facilitate, and now all of a sudden there's a guy out at second, and let's just start it that way. I'm not a real fan. Believe it or not, I'm a real fan of the tie. Okay. I think there's no reason that if you give your best for 12 innings and 12 innings, at the end of 12, there's a tie. I think we could go home and say, okay, put it in the tie column, and just count up the ties at the end of the year. At least you continue to play the game with the integrity of the rules that structure the game. The rule says a batter gets at the plate and he either hits it where they miss it or hits it where they can't catch it, or he gets 4 balls, or he gets hit by the pitch, and that's how he goes to the next base. That's the basic rule of the game. And when you say, okay, you in the dugout, go out to second base, you're violating the rules of the game, in my kind of humble and traditioned opinion.
Good point.
Good.
But I'm not a traditionalist. I love change. I mean, I love all the other stuff. If you want to ask me about that, I love change, and I'm really a catalyst to change. Okay, and that's what I've done all of my life. But that one particular rule, I don't like.
Thanks. Brian McDermott.
Hi, Bobby. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Brad.
This is somewhat related to, you were just talking about Tommy Lasorda. I imagine over the years, you've managed some real characters too.
Who?
You give us an example of 1 or 2 and why they were characters?
Woo! It depends on what caliber character. I mean, golly.
Guys wearing Groucho masks.
Oh yeah, I was a crazy character. People would kind of think that I was goofy when I was a player because I did all that stuff. I tried to have a good time every day of my life. And as I said earlier, when I had the most fun is when I was playing. Same costume as everybody else, and I was sitting the bench. I was still having a good time on the bench, or taking that he didn't take his bat out of the bat rack. That was always a great one. One of those games, it's 9-3, and your buddy's going to come up second in the inning, and you go down and you take his bat out of the bat rack and you hide it. huh? And now he's the second hitter, and he comes in and he takes everything off and he puts on his helmet and he gets ready to go to the on deck circle. And when he gets to the rack where the bats are stored, his bat's not there. But in those days, just so we know, everyone had one bat. Okay, now guys have rooms full of bats. Literally, Dustin Pedroia, when I was in Boston, had a closet from the bottom to the top of his bats, okay, where he could go in and select one that might be a quarter of an ounce heavier than the one he was using. And they put it on a scale that would measure it precisely on a digital scale, or the grain in the bat might be just the grain he's looking for that's going to make him feel the ball go. Well, we had a bat, and if you broke it, you got to order another one. You waited for it to be made. It was sent to you, and meanwhile, you used the broken bat or maybe a friend's bat. And that's why you had good friends in those days. Okay, you had an established friendship on your team because you might have to use his bat. You know, so I don't know where that's going with that, the answer to that question, but yeah, it's a crazy world. It's crazy different.
Bob Budkey.
Hello, Robert. Turn on your mic. Turn off the mute. You got
Yes,
on mute.
Of course.
Never-
There you go.
I've never been able to mute you before, Bob. That's the first time I've ever been able to mute you.
Well,
And
you might want to mute me automatically from your own. I just want to just
all of a
comment.
success for my day today.
First of all, I've after being in Stanford for 40 years, I now live in Richfield,
Oh,
which is
our loss, bro.
yeah. Well, my loss too, but at least I can continue with this organization. So that's what's most important to me. I just remember, Bobby, when you had your charity event and Tommy Lasorda was always there. And one of my biggest enjoyments in life has been family history, family genealogy. And he had a story to tell that I repeat often to people. And he said, you know why people come over from Italy and they're all called Tony? And he went on to say that everybody had a little piece of tape in New York on their forehead saying to New York. And so that was just one of the funny remembrances I had of him. I also have so many wonderful remembrances of your bar. The last day was such a great day when you closed it down during the Final Four game. And that was so special. I know I just enjoyed being there. I enjoyed being there with you. That was a special day. And so I just want to share those two things. And of course, the best thing of all is when Sally and I got a free trip to Hawaii on your 20th anniversary. So those were the three.
They're all great memories, Bob. Thank you muchly. I remember our conversations as well as I remember all those.
Oh,
events.
sure. Yeah.
It's great being with you again, Bob. And just on that crazy note, when you mentioned the charity events, which were, if anyone had the opportunity to do any of our Mickey Leone Foundation food and wine events.
I never missed it.
I know you never did, Bob, and I don't know if anybody else did, but you could you could attest to the fact that it was a new world of doing that type of thing. We have to remember that, you know, it was in those early 2000s, and it was after 9/11, and people were being together more, you know. We're actually, it seemed that there was a really good togetherness. And when Mickey Leone passed away, and I had that cockamamie idea that we'll start a foundation, we'll give scholarships in his name, and Mickey's name will never be forgotten in our community. we were thinking maybe we'd have, a scholarship of a few $1,000s in his name, and we'd be able to give it out to some kids. But with guys like Anthony Zesma and Billy Ippolito and Frankie Rimp, and from my restaurant, Paulie Pupo and Jerry Leone and Betsy Mercedes, these people who all kind of came together in a universal effort of doing something. When we did our wine events, there was nowhere to get wine glasses for an event. Billy Ippolito was getting Dom Perignon donated to our event before, and he wasn't going to allow the stuff to be poured in plastic cups, and we were charging a real fare to get in. So we had to buy our own wine glasses. We had thousands of them, and working with Michael Burkhoff from BevMax and the different hotels in the area. Well, just for the record, last year, the Mickey Leone Foundation gave away its $1 million to students from our high schools from 2001 to present day. We've now given over $1,100,000 in scholarships. We'll continue to do the same scholarships for guys and gals in every school in the community, probably forever, because we endowed those scholarships with the money that these crazy events had. Grade A, if you guys and gals ever missed it, the Singari family came in for the first one. Bob will remember this well. They piled shrimp, lobster claws higher than I was tall, and it was 10 by 10 feet wide of this mound of seafood that was adjacent to the Dom Perignon, where people were coming in and drinking Dom Perignon with lobster tails that were that big. It was absolutely incredible. The auctions. So before you say this, Bob, one of the great memories is I would do all crazy auctions. And so I did one auction where I would cook lasagna in your home, my mom's recipe, for up to 20 people, and I'll make the sauce, I'll roll the meatballs, I'll cook the lasagna, and I'll serve it to you and your closest 19 friends. And the person that bid on it happened to be the owner of the New York Mets' wife, Alex Cohen. Right. So back in 2000, whenever the hell it was, it must have been 1 or 2 or whatever years we were doing this great fundraisers, maybe 3, 4, or 5. I've got to go to the Cohen residence. I had no idea who Steve was at the time. I kind of heard about his little fund, but I go to this amazing house with a walk-in cooler in the kitchen and a walk-in freezer in the kitchen. Okay, to give you the idea of the scope of the kitchen. I cooked a fabulous lasagna dinner. I serve it to everyone at their wonderful dining room table. And while I was serving dessert, my buddy Dougie Romano, who, Bob, you know Mark, of course, his brother, and many of you know the Romano family. Well, Dougie was there kind of to assist me, and the reason that Alex Cohen went to the event was because of Dougie. So he came along for dinner also. During dinner, I did a little bananas flambe, and when I lit the flambe and the flame went up, Doug went back in his chair. Well, not only his chair, in his 14th century Queen Anne chair. There was one of 20 matching chairs that Al's throwing a hat around her dining room table. And as he went back, the two legs snapped on the back of the chair. And he went down and landed against the wall and almost knocked off a Monet that was hanging on the wall behind him. Yeah. So that was a cool memory of those events, Bob. And thank you for all of your patronage. And you look good, by the way, dude. Rick feels being good to you. You look good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel good. I remarried last year. I remarried last year.
Way to go, dude.
Hey, Bobby, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing the stories. It was really terrific. I mean, I was laughing. I mean, I'm sure the guys enjoyed it. We still have a huge number of guys on, which is unusual. So again, we appreciate your coming with us. Maybe we'll see you again soon. And I will turn the program back to Joe.
Thank you, Stu. Bobby, great as always. Thanks again for being with us, and always look forward to seeing you, and wish you well in whatever your endeavors are going to be. Hey, why not?
Why not?
You can be standing out there directing traffic again.
Never know.
Yeah, again, Bobby, it's been great. And I want to thank everybody for being with us today. And any of you guests, and Bobby yourself, you know, I think you're over 55, so you qualify for being a member.
I qualify.
Any of you guests that like what you saw and what our programs are, and again, we do this every week. Please consider joining our organization. We would love to have you as part of our membership. Again, Carl Funch is our membership director. Stu is our first vice president, and Howie is our recruitment director. But you've been invited by one of our members. If you're interested, get back to our person that invited you and join up. So with that, as always, guys, stay safe, be careful, get vaccinated, and stay healthy. And we'll see you next week. Thank you again for being here with us.
Stay off the roads today.